Hi there. In our study of Joshua, we're coming towards the end of chapter 5. It says in verse 13, when Joshua was near the town of Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with sword in hand. Joshua went up to him and demanded, "Are you friend or foe?" "Neither one," he replied. "I am the commander of the Lord's army." At this, Joshua fell with his face to the ground in reverence. "I am at your command," Joshua said. "What do you want your servant to do?" And one thing that Joshua realized in that moment, and that we need to realize, is that the battle we're in belongs to God. It's God who ultimately fights the battle. He uses us as his children, and he does things in us and then through us, but ultimately it's God who is fighting. It's God who gets the victory. And it's God who needs to be thanked at the end of the battle. And it may be that as you face various challenges in your life right now, it looks like the situation is the problem or the person is the problem. Well, the person is seldom the problem. Actually, what we're facing is a spiritual battle in heavenly places where the enemy is the problem. The enemy is not the person, the enemy is the devil. And as Christians, we fight using God's strength to see amazing breakthrough, all because the battle ultimately belongs to God. So I want to encourage you today that if you even feel perhaps that you're in a situation where all the odds are stacked against you, if you feel that there is nothing ultimately that you can do that will really make a difference, if you feel that you're at the end of yourself, then realize that in many respects, at the end of ourselves is where God begins. God has this amazing ability to point out to us that actually there's a heavenly battle going on. And what we see is the earthly part of that. And it's not insignificant what we see. It's not insignificant what we go through. But ultimately, there's a bigger battle. And that's a spiritual battle. So what's going on in the world right now with coronavirus is a medical battle, a scientific battle, if you like. I was speaking to a medical person today and saying it seems like even the doctors disagree. And yet ultimately it's a spiritual battle. The enemy is trying to do everything he can to destroy people that God has made. It may be in a political battle that you see with elections coming up, or it may be to do with your personal finances or your health or your children. And yet ultimately it's a spiritual battle because the battle belongs to the Lord. And when we give over to God what is God's, and we do what we can do, let him do what only he can do, we see the victory. Joshua realized that he needed to respond in reverence. "I am at your command," Joshua said. "What do you want your servant to do?" So God wants us today to acknowledge that the battle belongs to him. What we're fighting against actually is a spiritual enemy. And that we have a part to play in that, and we have a battle to fight. But ultimately, it belongs to God, and the victory belongs to God as well. So that gives us a different perspective on the things that we face on a day-by-day basis. So I want to encourage you today, look to God, because he's the one who's going to fight your battle. And ultimately, he's the one who will win it.